good life, the good life. Tonight, we're gonna live the good life. Alright, let's go and live the good life, the good life.
Good morning, Shy folk, and welcome back to Old Man Willow Farm. So today I'm going to talk to you about the type of farming we do here. And I know you're thinking, what the heck? You guys bought horses, you don't really farm. Well, yeah, we have 10 acres, we bought horses, but if you have a property with horses, essentially what you are is a grass farmer. So let me explain that to you. So here behind me is our neighbor's farm, and he farms cattle, and he has huge acreage. And the type of farming and pasture maintenance that he practices is very different from a small farm like ours. He has big equipment, he has huge like sprinkler system that waters this property, which is along a river, and he's like watering constantly. Cattle are really hard on the land, and as you can see, his pasturage is not looking too great at the moment, but we are midsummer, so that is kind of a problem that we're all having at the moment. But yeah, big farms like this, managing pasture is a whole different story from a small farm like ours. So let's talk a little bit today about what it takes to manage your pasture on a small farm. Okay, so essentially, if you have horses like we do, you really need an acre of property for every horse. So although we have a 12-stall barn, we only keep 8 horses here because we have about 8 acres under pasture. And that pasture requires constant maintenance and management. So one of the things we do regularly is we take our manure pile, which we break down to compost through the year, and we take that and we spread it over different portions of the pasture each year. So we feed the ground, like you have to put nutrients back in the soil. One of the other things that we do is we try and control weeds. So you have to be careful with that. We don't want to destroy the bees and the bugs and the good bugs in the soil, but on the other hand, we can't let the weeds run rampant and take over from the grazing. And part of that is practicing good pasture rotation. So we have our pastures divided up, and we rotate the horses around so that we never allow them to overgraze the grass and get down to the roots, which kills the grass and then allows the weeds to take over. We're always moving them around the pasture, giving the grass time to recover and regrow. So pasture rotation, feeding the grass, super important. Controlling the weeds, we do that by spraying with a weed spray that is safe for animals, and also by cutting the grass and that keeps the weeds so that they don't go to seed, and then allows the grass to take over from the weeds. So those are kind of some of the practices that we follow. We are on a floodplain, and so we have some rather unique problems here in that our pasture sits underwater for probably about 6 months of the year. And that we really struggle with that killing off the grass and allowing the weeds to take over. So we actually have to reseed pretty much every year. We have to reseed, and we do that in the early spring so that the grass has time to grow and take root before the summer. So those are some of the things that we do here. I would love to hear some of your techniques that you use to preserve pasture. So comment below, tell me, give us some tips. We'd love to hear from you as well. One of the other really key things, which I did mention in the last video, is that you have to rest the land when it's wet. If you have horses out on pasture when it's wet out, they're just going to destroy it. They're going to churn it up. They're going to destroy it. They're going to destroy the grass. So we have sacrifice paddocks that we use through the wet months. The horses still get to be turned out. Our pastures get to rest, and then when the dry months come again, then the horses can be out all day and have good grazing. So those are some hopefully useful tips for you on pasture management. I just want to address the issue about horses in the wild, and horses in the wild having somehow a better quality of life than horses in captivity. So I have two horses here that are a great example of why I don't think that this is true. So Taya, who is right behind me there, and I'll show you in a little bit, is 23 years old and has lived most of her life on large acreage, essentially like a wild horse. So she hasn't had much human intervention in her life. And there are two problems with that. Firstly, horses that are out on pasture have to be dewormed regularly because they will pick up parasites. And horses in the wild don't have that luxury. So they're competing for nutrients with the parasites that have invaded their bodies. So these horses had not been wormed and were very thin when they arrived here. And that was one of the first things we did, was deworm them to get rid of the parasite load. The second problem is that as horses get older, like Taya here, their teeth begin to wear down and become really sharp. And it ends up that they can't properly eat or grind their food, and so they can't get the nutrients they want. Now, when they're in the wild, what essentially ends up happening is they slowly starve to death. And that's what was happening to Taya. She was slowly starving to death. So I'm going to show you, just turn the camera around. Okay, so this is Dora. So Dora is younger. She's about 16. Don't follow me, girls. She's younger, and she has recovered a lot more quickly. Whereas Taya, you can see that she is still very, very thin. Now, we have filed her teeth, we've dewormed her, but she's an old girl, she's 23, and she's taking a long time to recover. Whereas Dora is doing a lot better. You can see she's been here about a month, and she is starting to look fabulous. You can see her coat is dappling up. Now, she looked just like Taya when she arrived. So I'm so pleased with the progress that she's made. And this is part of just being out on pasture, but with the proper maintenance and care. So it's not enough to stick your horse out in a field. There's other things you have to do. Hey, girls. They're super curious. Hey, girls. Hello. Hello, sweet girls. How are you this morning? Yeah. So we're working on old Taya here, and she will eventually put on weight. She needs alfalfa. She needs mare and foal feed, high in fat. But we'll get her there in the end.
Alright, let's go and live the good life, the good life.